Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really fascinating bit of gear history. We're tracing the origin story of the commercial guitar effects pedal.
Yeah, and that road, well, it pretty much leads straight to one brand, Maestro.
Exactly.
If you use any kind of stomp box today, you're kind of living in the world Maestro helped build. We're not just, listing old gear. We're looking at how this one kind of weird electronic box,
The fuzz tone.
right, the fuzz tone, went from being this studio accident to launching a massive consumer product category. Maestro is really chapter one. We want to understand the corporate side, the R&D risks they took.
Okay, let's get into it. Where do we start? The beginning, I guess, which is, well, it's a great story of making money from a mistake.
Yeah.
The 1962 launch of the Maestro FZ1 fuzz tone.
And you got to understand why the FD1 was the one that stuck. It had this huge leg up right from the start. Maestro, the brand, it was owned by Chicago Musical Instruments, CMI.
Okay.
And CMI, that was Gibson's parent company.
Oh, right. So that means...
That means this strange new box designed to make your guitar sound, broken. It had Gibson's manufacturing power and their worldwide distribution network behind it. Instantly.
Wow, okay. That's a massive advantage over some small inventor tinkering in a garage.
Absolutely. Credibility, scale.
Yeah.
It was huge.
And the story of the sound itself, it's pure Nashville legend, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Starts with an engineer, Glenn Snoddy. He's recording a Marty Robbins session, the song Don't Worry.
Right.
And something in the recording console, maybe a preamp tube, maybe a whole channel strip, just failed.
Yeah.
It produced this totally distorted, kind of ripping, fuzzy sound on the bass track.
The sound of failure, basically.
Pretty much electronic breakdown. But Snoddy and another tech, Revis Hobbs, they heard it and thought, hey, that's cool.
They liked it.
They loved it. Enough that they figured out how to replicate that specific failure in a standalone circuit. And that's what they sold to Gibson CMI.
That's incredible. They bottled lightning or maybe bottled faulty wiring.
Oh, exactly. They were selling musicians a box that did something intentionally wrong. The FZ1, it was the first fuzz pedal, really mass-produced and marketed.
But it wasn't an instant smash hit?
No, not at all. And that's key. Sales were actually pretty slow for the first few years.
Wait, really? The pedal that basically kicked off this whole industry, it flopped at first. Why do you think that was? Was the sound just too out there?
Well, yeah, partly. But I think it was more of a conceptual hurdle. Musicians understood wanting to be louder or maybe having a cleaner tone or a warmer one.
Sure.
They didn't yet have a category in their heads for wanting their guitar to sound deliberately ragged and buzzy and broken.
They were selling a sound that engineers usually tried to avoid.
Exactly. Not just different, but technically bad, according to the standards of the time. It needed like an ambassador, a moment where everyone heard it and went, oh, that's what it's for.
And that moment is pure rock and roll history.
Totally.
It took 3 years, right? Until 1965. The game completely changed when Keith Richards plugged into an FZ1 for the Rolling Stones' mega hit.
I can't get no satisfaction.
That riff.
Yeah, that single 3-second guitar part. It instantly showed everyone what fuzz could do. It proved the whole idea of effects pedals had commercial legs.
And Richards famously thought it was just a placeholder, right? He wanted horns initially.
That's the story. He used the fuzz to sketch out the horn line, but that sound, that abrasive, fuzzy sound just stuck. And boom, suddenly everyone needed an FZ1. Demand went crazy.
It cemented the pedal's place in history and proved guitarists would pay money to sound like their heroes, even if their heroes sound like a busted speaker.
Precisely. And Gibson, seeing this, they iterated, of course. You get the FZ1A and later versions.
Okay, so the pedal market is starting to explode thanks to Keith. But there's also stuff happening behind the scenes, corporately speaking.
Right. While Maestro is riding the FZ1 wave, the parent company structure changes. In 1969, CMI gets absorbed into this bigger conglomerate, ECL, which then rebrands as Norlin.
Norlin. That name rings a bell for Gibson history, often not in a good way for collectors.
Sometimes, yeah. But Maestro continued under Norlin through the 70s. This shift is actually kind of important because moving from CMI, which was music-focused, to Norlin, a bigger, more diversified company, maybe changed their appetite for R&D a bit. It pushed Maestro to think beyond just fuzz.
So they couldn't just rest on the fuzz tone's laurels.
Nope. It proved the concept, sure, but now they had to show they could keep innovating, move from that happy accident to deliberate product development.
Okay, so what's next after fuzz? Maestro starts branching out in the late 60s.
Yeah, dramatically. The next big wave in effects was wah pedals.
Of course.
And Maestro jumps right in. They released the Boomerang wah, the BG1, and later the BG2 models. This puts them right in that initial wah craze alongside brands like Vox and Thomas Organ.
Was the Boomerang just another Vox clone, or did it have its own thing going on?
It had some unique points. The BG2, notably, combined the wah effect with a volume pedal function in the same treadle.
Oh, neat. Like 2 pedals in one.
Yeah, pretty useful. And they were known for having a really wide frequency sweep.
Yeah.
You could get these super deep, low sounds all the way up to really piercing highs. Give it a distinct voice.
And while they're developing their own stuff, they're also leveraging that Gibson CMI network, right? Talk about the Echoplex.
Ah, yes, the Echoplex Tape Echo. Iconic piece of gear. Huge, clunky, amazing sounding.
Definitely.
So the Echoplex itself, the technology, was developed by a company called Market Electronics. But for a significant part of its run, especially the popular EP2 and EP3 models.
You see the Maestro name on them?
Exactly. Maestro handled the marketing and distribution. It's another example of them using their corporate muscle. They could spot cool, complex tech from smaller outfits and basically give it a global platform.
That partnership strategy, combining outside innovation with their distribution power, seems like a recurring theme.
It really is.
Yeah.
And kind of sets the stage for their biggest leap forward in terms of like pure R&D ambition. Which brings us to the Tom Oberheim era.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting, right? Early to mid-70s under Norlin ownership.
Yeah. They bring in Tom Oberheim. And this fundamentally shifts what a Maestro pedal even means. Oberheim's designs. They weren't just guitar accessories anymore. They were pushing into serious studio processing, even synthesizer territory.
He wasn't thinking just make guitar sound different. He was thinking process the signal like a synth.
That's a perfect way to put it. It was a totally different mindset. Oberheim was deep in electronic music design, not just guitar amps. He started taking ideas like multi-stage phasing, stuff you'd find in modular synths.
Big wall size things.
Right, and shrinking those complex circuits down into stomp boxes that the guitars could actually take on stage and step on.
Okay, let's break down some of those key Oberheim-era units. First up, the phaser.
The PS1, or PS1A phase shifter, came out around 71. This thing was huge.
Huge in terms of impact or physical size.
Both, actually. It was one of the early big box phasers, and it sounded incredible. Oberheim's design used, I believe, 4 phasing stages, which gave it this really lush, complex, swirling sound, way beyond simpler phasers of the time.
Became a massive seller for them, right?
Yeah, one of the biggest hits in the 70s. They even made a smaller version later, the MPS-2 mini phase.
So the phaser was kind of the gateway drug into Oberheim's world. What else?
Well, if the phaser was accessible, the next one was way out there. The RM1A ring modulator around 1972.
Ring modulator. Okay, that sounds intense.
It is. Ring modulation is complex stuff. It creates these clangorous, bell-like, often non-harmonic sounds by multiplying signals. It was technology you associated more with, like academic electronic music studios, Moog and ARP synths.
Not usually found next to a tube screamer.
Definitely not. It produced these wild, sometimes bizarre, but incredibly musical textures. Think sci-fi sound effects, avant-garde stuff. Putting that kind of studio-grade processor into a pedal was a bold move.
Shows they weren't afraid to get complex, even niche.
Totally. And for the bass players, let's not forget the BB1 Bass Brassmaster, also from that early 70s Oberheim period.
What did that do?
It was this really distinctive fuzz, but it had an octave component blended in, specifically voiced for bass.
Yeah.
Kind of gnarly, synth-like tones. It wasn't a huge seller initially, but it became this massive cult classic later on for bassists wanting really aggressive, unique sounds.
So that whole Oberheim period, the phaser, the ring mod, the bass fuzz, that was Maestro really pushing the envelope.
Absolutely. That's the R&D leap. It proved you could put genuinely sophisticated modulation and synthesis concepts literally at a musician's feet. It blurred the lines between the guitar rig and the synth studio in a way that hadn't really happened before in pedals. It just raised the bar for everyone.
Beyond the circuits themselves, Maestro did some other interesting things, operationally speaking, like how they taught people to use these new sounds.
Yeah, this is fascinating. They actually produced these little demo records, flexidiscs.
Wow, really? Like the ones you used to get in magazines?
Exactly. Specifically to demonstrate how to use these new effects, especially the more complex ones like the phaser or ring mod. Think about it. It's basically early content marketing for pedals.
That makes so much sense. If you invent something totally new, people might not know what to do with it.
Right. These sounds were conceptually novel, Players didn't have a frame of reference, so Maestro realized they needed to educate their customers, show them the musical possibilities. It was smart. Essential, really, for driving adoption of complex tech.
And going back to the FZ1 for a second, didn't Gibson actually build the fuzz into some instruments?
They did. In the 60s, for a short time, you could get certain Gibson basses, like the EB0F, I think, with the FZ1 fuzz circuit built right in. Switchable, of course.
That shows incredible confidence in the effect itself, making it part of the actual instrument.
Huge vote of confidence. Okay, so let's zoom back out to the bigger picture. Maestro keeps going through the 70s under Norlin. And it's worth remembering, Norlin also owned Moog Music for a while during that period.
Ah, another connection between the synth world and Maestro's effects. Makes the Oberheim stuff make even more sense strategically.
Definitely reinforces that link.
Yeah.
But, like many classic brands, that golden era started to wind down towards the end of the 70s.
What happened? Competition?
Yeah, largely. The market started getting flooded with cheaper, often smaller, effects pedals, particularly from Japan. Brands like BOS, MXR were offering good sounds in smaller, more affordable packages. The big, complex, and often expensive Maestro units started to look less competitive.
So the classic line started getting phased out.
Pretty much. By the early 80s, the Maestro name largely went dormant in the effects world, though Gibson would occasionally reuse the trademark on other things.
But that's not quite the end of the story, is it? The name itself had staying power.
Incredible staying power. Fast forward decades, right up to 2022. Gibson decides to bring Maestro back.
The Maestro Original Collection. I remember seeing that launch.
Yep. New pedals, the Fuzztone FCM, Invader Distortion, Ranger Overdrive, Comet Chorus, Discoverer Delay. 5 brightly colored boxes.
And they leaned heavily on the history, right?
Absolutely. The whole marketing campaign was built around that 1962 origin story, positioning Maestro as the first or oldest stompbox maker. The fact that the name still had that resonance, that weight, after being mostly inactive for so long, that tells you something.
It really does. Okay, so we've gone from a busted mixing desk in Nashville through Keith Richards' corporate buyouts, Tom Oberheim's synth brain. Let's try and boil it down. If someone asks, why should I care about Maestro? What are the key takeaways?
I think there are 4 core reasons. Maestro is just fundamental to understanding gear history.
Okay, reason 1.
First mover. Simple as that. The 1962 SC1 took a studio accident, a mistake, and turned it into the very first widely available consumer product in a category that barely existed. They invented the category, really.
Got it. Number 2.
Mass adoption. The satisfaction moment. It wasn't just about selling fuzz pedals. It proved the whole concept of effects pedals was commercially viable on a massive scale.
Yeah.
It showed how one hit song could create huge demand for a specific piece of gear. That feedback loop, Maestro and the Stones basically established it for pedals.
Right. Crucial link between artist and industry. Okay, number 3.
This is the big one conceptually for me. The R&D leap. Bringing in Tom Oberheim, that wasn't just making better fuzzes or wahs, it was injecting serious synthesizer-level thinking, complex modulation, into stomp boxes. It fundamentally changed what a pedal could be, from just a tone box to a real signal processor.
Bridging the gap between guitar rig and studio synth.
Exactly. And finally, number 4, brand endurance. The name just lasted. That history, that legacy of being the first, of having those iconic sounds and those Oberheim innovations, it carried enough cultural weight that Gibson could bring it back credibly 2022, decades later. That resilience is remarkable.
First mover, mass adoption, R&D leap, and brand endurance. That sums it up really well. It's an amazing journey from, like you said, a faulty wire to this huge global industry of stomp boxes.
It really is. And thinking about that R&D leap specifically, the Oberheim stuff in the 70s, taking complex electronic ideas and making them accessible in a pedal format. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
I wonder what.
Well, it poses a question for you, listening now. What's the equivalent today? What emerging tech, maybe something total unexpected now, is going to be the source of the next big leap in musical gear? Is it AI generating effects? Is it deeper integration of modular synthesis concepts? Advanced physical modeling?
That's a great question. The next Oberheim moment could be brewing right now in some completely different field.
Exactly. That process of innovation, taking complex or accidental discoveries and turning them into tools for musicians, that's the real legacy of Maestro, and it's still happening.